Yeah, so I'll just share this as I was alluding to earlier. There's a presentation that we're going to be giving to a number of people in the sector on this issue, which I thought you might find interesting. So, as you know, spending review is, oh my God, it's not moving. Yeah, you know what, I'll just, if it's not going to work, I'll just have to talk to it one time.
Don't you just love?
Yeah, so anyway, as you know, spending review is coming down the track, and I think what we're keen to start doing is giving people more context and landscape for the review and how we're hoping to achieve the best outcome for the sector, and of course try and get people's feedback as we're doing that. So the current snapshot, I guess, is that, as many of you guys will be aware, but I guess not everyone in the sector is always, that the Chancellor has announced that this is going to be taking place over the summer and the result will be announced in the autumn. Work's already begun on that between us and DCMS to kind of gather information and build the cases and so on. And we're going to keep doing that, keep talking to the sector, keep talking to DCMS as we go. The funding context for it, as some people may, it seems like a lifetime ago, we got a 1.84% inflationary uplift in 2021. And that effectively enabled us to give people about 6.5 million additional programme funds to pass on to MPOs. The thing is, since then, obviously, the COVID pandemic has changed a lot of the landscape. We've directed much of our funding, 160 million of emergency response funds, to which awards have already been made. And the government has, of course, put its own intervention of 1.57 billion in too. And that's obviously an essential boost to keep everyone afloat in the short term, but it's going to be some time before we're going to use and earn income in the sector they had before. This needs more support for the medium term, I guess, for that past 20, and that's where the SR really comes in and where we need to make sure best case that we can to government. Now, I did have a timeline here that you would have been able to see, but effectively what it was showing was that over the summer, we started working with DCMS on those business cases and have started submitting those to them during September. And there's some tweaking going on exactly how they would like them to be and so on right now. And DCMS will submit its own case to government at some point in October, we're led to believe. And in November, the budget in SR will then come out with the final results, probably not exactly at the same time, but probably concurrently. So that's the rough timeline for it. And we're currently at the point where we're kind of at the late stages putting those business cases together with DCMS. So the Chancellor put out in the summer, many of you guys will have seen more than the sector perhaps, that they are focusing on jobs and skills, levelling up the regions and nations, improving public services, strengthening UK's place in the world, and restructuring government in a way that helps them deliver their own priorities. And so what we've been talking about is how we hit those. I say we as a sector can begin to hit those. In particular, there are 3 areas where we're thinking that we can make a big difference and make a contribution. So the first is in sustaining Arts Council's programme and admin funding, which the case that we believe we can make is that this is benefits audiences across the nation. It is actually also providing jobs in a lot of often places where, so we put some research out today, which is showing, for example, that over 300 MPs are in places of low employment. These are the kind of things that we're trying to build through that sustaining of that Arts Council programme funding will provide those benefits. And then on top of that, we're trying to make a case for further funding that could be spent on communities outside London to really hit that kind of levelling up priority that government have been pushing. And then thirdly, we're talking about if there could be some capital funding that would help adapt and maintain venues in a way that's probably going to be necessary post-COVID so that they can benefit audiences in the way that we talked about earlier. So those are kind of 3 major things that we're currently working with them on as business cases. Now, of course, there's a kind of external context to this as well, how we talk about it and how people in the sector talk about it. And one of the things that we always try to do is to try and help the sector make the best case it can. And we think that translating some of that behind the scenes work into those messages in a nutshell is best done in kind of talking about three areas: about investment in culture being investment in good jobs, local high streets, and in Britain's place in the world, and the sector being a world leader. So we're going to be talking about this at 3 points in the coming weeks and months. So today we've got something out about how culture is playing a role in high streets and vitalising them, and that's going to continue post coronavirus. And Nick's going to be on front row tonight talking about that. We've had a few things out on social media and so on today as well, and I think there's been quite a bit of regional coverage too. I think Yorkshire Post is covering it. In a couple of weeks, we're going to be doing the economic contribution. So we've got data that's going to be coming out showing that it's employing more people than Sainsbury's, that these are good jobs that are more productive than in manufacturing and less susceptible to automation in the future. And then finally, we've got a piece of research that's going to be coming out further into October probably, which is a literature review on culture's contribution to international soft power and exports and so on, which is going to have an interesting finding in it that whereas previously I think this had been talked about in kind of vague terms, that actually there is research to show that you could maybe start to apply what the benefit to trade could be to an improvement in your soft power as a nation. So those things are going to be coming out in the coming next, I don't know, 6 weeks or so on, starting with today. And on top of that, so for a while, and I did have some nice pictures of the web pages if the thing had worked, we have making the case web pages for the sector, which they can use, which have the information on there, but also kind of help them work out how they can contact the press, contact your MP, that kind of thing. So we'll be doing that again. We'll be updating it. Last year, I think we had 14,000 unique visits to it. So obviously proved popular to some extent with the sector. And I think the most engaged was working with your MP. So clearly people want to do that and they feel that they want to get better at it. So we'll continue to produce a lot of social content, Twitter threads, GIFs, that kind of thing. We found that people like to share those kind of things and it seems to work. We tend to get hundreds of thousands of engagements for them. And we're going to also encourage people to talk about make it real. So, you know, how the impacts that we've described before, you know, jobs, high streets, that thing, how it feels in your town, and to try and get more of a conversation going that way, or rather make that conversation going. And yeah, so that's kind of it in a nutshell, really. That's what we're doing behind the scenes. There's a few research things that we've got coming out, which we hope help hit a positive message. And I think it's that positivity that we're really trying to push at the moment, because we're getting a lot of stigma guests from government and elsewhere. We don't want to be appearing too negative, and that we should be talking about the positive contribution which can make to the government's priorities, and that we can get the best result all that way.